BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNid88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And welcome to BBOR, the home of true crime talk radio and your premier destination for unsolved mysteries, criminal psychology, and exploring the dark side of cyberspace. My name is Ned DeHaan, and I am your host, as well as the creator of AstroPsych 400 here on YouTube, and regular contributor to the Zodiac Killer channel. And a great way to support these shows is just by listening to some more content. But you can also go over to Amazon.com and have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse, written by me, Ned DeHaan. It is a novel, murder mystery, inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is indeed fictional. However, who doesn't love a good mystery? And there is always the TeeSpring page. Feel free to check out some of the merchandise. And remember, being weird is not a crime. Let the show begin. Alright, hello everybody. Today is Monday, another Zodiac Monday. Welcome to the show. How's everybody doing? I hope everyone had a good weekend. And just a quick reminder, this show is available for free downloads at LaunchPad 1. There's a link to that in the description box. You can download the audio version as a pure podcast, take it on the go, anywhere and anyhow. And on this channel, I'm also doing a regular series about the Phantom Killer from 1946, a hooded serial killer who terrorized the town of Texarkana. And the Phantom Killer is very similar to the Zodiac Killer. Both of them primarily targeted lovers' lanes. Both of them wore some type of hooded cloth mask. Both of them had very short reigns of terror or periods of activity. And there was a suggestion actually that came in from Wildfire99, who said, why don't you do a poll on what people think about the Phantom Killer and the Zodiac Killer? And I will do that right now. I want to do that at the beginning of the episode. And the polling question is, number 1, do you believe the Phantom Killer and the Zodiac Killer are the same person? Number 2, do you believe that the Phantom Killer inspired the Zodiac Killer? And number 3, do you believe that these cases are just simply unrelated? And you can put your ideas in the comments section down below. You can even answer this polling question by just saying, I agree with number 1, number 2, or number 3. Now, I know that Wildfire99 is going to say number 1 because his Zodiac suspect is Robert Ivan Nichols, who was born in 1926, and he was just about 20 years old in 1946. I believe he's around 19, though, at the beginning of the Phantom Killer crime spree. And that really is what the Phantom is, a spree killer. And then another person who would also agree with number 1 is David Gold, who is the author of My Dance with the Zodiac Killer, who even features both the Zodiac and the Phantom on the cover of his book because he believes that it was the same person, a variant of the group murder theory, but it was primarily orchestrated by his suspect, Frank Lee Morris. You guys will know that I am taking a hard stance on this one, and I vote for number 2. I say very clearly that I believe the Phantom Killer was an inspiration to the Zodiac Killer, that he was familiar with the case, that he probably had read up about it a lot, or even knew some of the details, and that the Zodiac incorporated elements from the Phantom Killer into the crime spree launched that by the Zodiac in 1968 and 69. And I think that it's an appropriate term. Yes, of course, the Phantom Killer and the Zodiac Killer are both serial killers, but they're also spree killers. These are crime sprees. And so says me anyway, but there will be people who dispute this. However, if you would like to hear more about the Phantom Killer and the Texarkana Moonlight Murders, you can tune in every Wednesday here on BlackBoxOnlineRadio, and you can hear a regular segment about the Phantom Killer, as well as the crimes, the investigations, and theories that people have in the case. And to support all of these efforts, you can go over to BuyMeACoffee.com and make a contribution to the show via the page BlackBoxNed88. BuyMeACoffee.com, BlackBoxNed88. But the easiest way to find it is by going into the description box and clicking on the link. And anyone who makes a contribution or donation to support the show will get a shout out here on Zodiac Mondays. So, I want to move forward in time a little bit because some people think that the Zodiac killer was operating in 1946. Other people think that the Zodiac was a serial killer before 1968 and 69, but he actually began in 1962 with the murder of Ray Davis, and then there are the Domingos Edwards murders in 1963. Then there are the Swindle murders in 1964, the Black Sapphire murder of 1965, which saw the death of Diane Jarish, and the Sherry Joe Bates murder of 1966. So they believe that the Zodiac was a prolific serial killer. However, he only took credit for the murders of 1968 and 69 and attributed them to the Zodiac persona. And there could be several reasons for that. One of them that most people turn to is that the crimes of 1962 to 66, which I was just discussing, were sloppy. They were not very calculating. There's definitely a brash and brazen element to them, and maybe someone just was not proud of them, or maybe at that point the person did not have evidence to share that only he and the police would know. He didn't have any trophies from the crime scenes that he could use to prove that he had committed the crimes. There could be numerous reasons why this person did not take credit for that, and I'm not a subscriber to that theory, but I like talking about ideas that I don't always agree with. And last week on the channel, I did a bonus episode talking about the Swindle murders from 1964, which saw the deaths of Johnny Ray and Joyce Swindle. And Bruce had sent me a set of documents, which were mostly news articles from 1964 and 65, talking about the early news coverage surrounding the Swindle murders. And I did a reading of them here on this channel, and it was meant to be just a resource. I did not monetize the video or give a commentary on the subject because I wanted to save that for this particular time right now. And Johnny Ray and Joyce Swindle were murdered on February 5th of 1964. They were gunned down with a .22 caliber firearm, and some people believe that it was most likely a rifle because the killer was beginning about 50 feet away and then edged closer and closer to Johnny Ray and Joyce Swindle. And the early news coverage really had a big discrepancy in the time frame. They're estimating that the shooting occurred at 8:15 on February 5th of 64. Other sources were saying that it had to have occurred at 8:30 because there was a scream that was heard at 8:30. Someone was shouting, "No, no, no." And then the bodies were discovered at 8:35. So that's why they estimate that it occurred at 8:30 on February 5th of 1964. But I think the ultimate conclusion is whoever murdered Johnny Ray and Joyce Swindle, the Ocean Beach area of San Diego, which is so a Southern California crime, not a Northern California crime, but in the San Diego area, whoever committed this crime got extraordinarily lucky because all they had were shell casings. That was the only real piece of evidence that was left behind. There are no witness descriptions. There is a theory that the perpetrator stole Johnny Ray's watch and that was the target of the whole thing, but that's just a theory. But when I said they got lucky, the big reason why the killer didn't get caught was there was very little evidence that was left behind, and that's because the authorities did not immediately know where the shooter was positioned until several days later. As I said, he's 50 feet away. Well, where was he exactly? And by the time they found the hilltop where he should have been located during the shooting, media reporters had already been to the area and they had trampled the grounds and they destroyed any chance of finding the footprints that the killer would have left behind. And they had no idea that they were doing that, but a lot of evidence was lost in the process. But that's in 1964. There are a lot of people who do not talk frequently about the swindles because they think that the first Zodiac crime was in 1962 with the murder of Ray Davis, a taxi driver, the same way that Paul Stein, the Zodiac's final victim, was also a taxi driver, and there were two taunting phone calls, and not Paul Stein, Ray Davis's body was also relocated from the cab to a different location. But that's a very big difference between the Davis crime and the Stein crime. But in the early news coverage, I didn't encounter any particular theory trying to connect the Swindle murders to the murder of Ray Davis in 1962, but they definitely made attempts to do that with other crimes, and one of them was the Domingos Edwards murders of 1963. And the first person that I heard this from was Michael Cole, author of the Zodiac Revisited trilogy, and he talked about how, from the very beginning, even in 1963, they thought that that crime, the double homicide of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards, was committed by a serial killer, by someone driven by heterosexual animosity to go out and commit the crimes, and then that the Swindle murders a year later, it's actually only about 7 months later, I should say, because June to February, that was also a similar crime, committed because of heterosexual animosity. And someone who is just a jealous, rejected individual who is targeting couples for a calculating reason. And Michael Cole didn't say this, but one of my own observations that I like to share is there is a concept of someone called a frustrated serial killer. That's not the exact term for it, that's what I call it, because I think it's appropriate, and I don't even remember the real name, but somebody who doesn't commit crimes purely on a calculated basis. The serial killer is only operating when he's at a low point in his life. He lost his job, he lost his relationship, which I doubt the murderer probably in this case even had, or he lost a lot of money. There's some type of low point in his life, and that's why he's only committing crimes maybe once a year, or once every 2 years, once every 3 years. It's not purely done on a sexual urge. This person is doing it because of frustrations. There are sexually motivated serial killers. These are usually the guys like Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, or Andrei Chikatilo, the butcher of Rostov, who even talked about how that became one of the only ways that he could ejaculate while he was committing murder. I absolutely don't believe that story about Chikatilo, but I could tell you some things about him in a later episode. But those guys were definitely sexually motivated serial killers. They have this urge inside of them. And with the Zodiac and the pre-Zodiac crimes, I'm not really seeing that. If there's any sexual motivation, I think it's more about the planning process. I think it's more about this person is just trying to use it as a type of distraction from the misery and rejection in their own life. And I also wanted to get to your questions and comments from the last episode about the Swindle murders. Steph says, what a sad situation. And it was a sad situation. Johnny Ray and Joyce Swindle were newlyweds. They were just walking along the seaside. They weren't bothering anyone, to the best of our knowledge. They weren't trying to hurt anyone. And, they were attacked from a distance. It was very deliberate. And that's why some people even refer to this as a sniper attack. But it just seems completely unprovoked, and that murder was the primary objective here. And then the next comment is from Aaron Aragon, who says, the beach murders of the early 1960s are eerily similar to the Zodiac. If not him, then who? I'm betting on a young Zodiac honing his dark craft. That's why I wanted to talk about this, because Aaron is not alone. Michael Cole is not alone. Numerous people believe that there are connections with the murder of Ray Davis and the Domingos Edwards murders and the Swindle murders. The Black Sapphire murder from 1965, the murder of Diane Jarish, is perhaps not normally associated with that group. One that I said at the beginning, Diane Jarish was murdered, and she was sexually assaulted with a branch, like a tree branch, and she was strangled with her own bra. My honest take on that is I don't think there is an ounce of connection to the Zodiac case, but I was reading about her murder in the book The Age of Zodiac by Michael Benson. And there's also a page about Diane Cherish on ZodiacCiphers.com, and her crime is called the Black Sapphire Murder because she had a black sapphire ring that was taken from her body after death. So, was that a trophy that was taken by the killer, or is that a robbery? Did the person think that he could sell that ring? I'm not 100% sure, but I don't see an ounce of Zodiac connection, and even somebody like me, who doesn't believe that the Zodiac killed or murdered Johnny Ray and Joyce Swindle 100%, or Domingos and Edwards 100%, or Ray Davis 100%, I definitely would explore the possibility, because, as Aaron put it out, the crimes are a little bit similar to the Zodiac's activities in the 1960s. Not 100%, but they are similar. And people thought about this at the time. You can go through the early news coverage for yourself, and you can see that people are like, no, wait a second. Is there a link between the Swindle murders of 64 and the Domingos Edwards murders of 63? I mean, my first immediate response is there are some major differences in these crimes. Johnny Ray and Joyce Swindle are attacked by more or less a sniper, right? Some guy who's about 50 feet away and then edging closer and then steals Johnny Ray's watch. But Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards were murdered on a beach off of Highway Route 101, and they were tied up with pre-cut lengths of rope. They were in a very confrontational encounter with the perpetrator, and Robert Domingos even got into a fist fight with him. Linda Edwards' swimsuit was also cut, and her breasts were revealed. And because she was eventually murdered, she was shot and killed with a .22 caliber firearm. And we don't know if she was exposed post-mortem or still alive. And that's because after they were both gunned down, Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards were dragged to a seaside shack, and their bodies were placed there, and then the killer tried to burn the shack to the ground by striking matches, and there was this tarp that was hanging on the shack door, and the killer's trying to set the tarp on fire, but was unsuccessful and then disappeared and was never seen again. So, I mean, it really is very mysterious, but some people think that crime is almost identical to the Zodiac's Lake Berryessa stabbing. The Zodiac commits the double homicide of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen at Lake Herman Road, the Blue Rock Springs shooting at Blue Rock Springs Park, which saw the death of Darlene Ferrin. Those crimes are both committed by gun. Then on September 27th of 1969, the Zodiac would deviate from that by wearing a hooded costume, going after a couple in the daytime with a knife. Why would he do that? Some people think that it was just recreating the Domingos Edwards murders of 63, that crime was an absolute failure, and that he did that to correct an error of the past. And that would tie into this whole theory of how the Zodiac committed murders in Southern California for a period of years, but they were all very sloppy, much as Aaron Aragon said. Then the beach murders of the early 60s are eerily similar to the Zodiac. Yes, like these places like Riverside, Oceanside, Ocean Beach. I mean, you talk about that bodies of water connection. That definitely seems to be present. And then the crimes, though, are just always have something going wrong, or they're just not very brilliant. And this person wants to fuel his own ego, right? So if you had a crime like the Domingos Edwards murders, where it was more or less a failure, then he would want to correct that and try to commit the crime without making the same mistakes. What I'm talking about is the Zodiac, or the perpetrator at the Domingos Edwards crime, Gaviota Beach, as it's referred to as, he comes down Highway Route 101, or he sees the car that was parked by Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards. It's a senior skip day, so they're on the beach, and they're in their swimsuits, and the Zodiac, or whoever committed that crime, brought pre-cut lengths of rope, and he had Robert Domingos tied up, perhaps in the exact same way that Brian Hartnell was tied up at Lake Berryessa. But what people theorize is that he didn't check the restraints on Robert Domingos, and Robert Domingos was able to break free from these bindings, and he gets into this fist fight with the perpetrator, and then they just take off running. Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards take off running, and then the perpetrator fires 26 shots at them, killing them both, drags their bodies to the seaside shack, and that's when it's attempted to have been set on fire. And this is also credit to Michael Cole. What he wrote in the Zodiac Revisited was the killer most likely thought, in his hypothesis, that no matter how much planning went into the crime, it could still have gone horribly wrong. My take on this is a little bit more skeptical, because I think that the Domingos Edwards murders were not committed by the Zodiac killer. Again, this is my own genuine take on the subject. I think that the Domingos Edwards murders were a sexual assault gone wrong. That this person was trying to sexually assault Linda Edwards, and that's why her swimsuit was cut, and that Robert Domingos was able to break free and interrupt the sexual assault. And then the same parts happened. This couple is running away from the perpetrator, and then that person starts firing at them, killing them both. And every other part of the story would be in line. It's just, I don't think it was the Zodiac. I think it was an opportunistic sexual predator. And as of now, I'm also not convinced that the crimes of Johnny Ray and Joyce Swindle were committed by the Zodiac, because, again, these are just so different, that someone is going from attacking a couple by very confrontationally to going 50 feet away and then trying to shoot them down like a sniper. I think that that is a little bit different in terms of psychopathology, but there is something to share in terms of counterbalance, and this is from CD, who wrote that Johnny Ray and Joyce Swindle were killed just before Valentine's Day, right? February 5th of 1964, and one of the only clues or things that seemed out of the ordinary was that they had an open box of Valentine's Day candy nearby, and in almost all the news articles they talk about this open box of Valentine's Day candy. CD writes, "The open box of Valentine's Day candy found at the scene is very interesting to me. Those boxes of candy used to come with notes, like the two that were included with the Halloween card mailed to Paul Avery. I wonder if those were missing from the open box of candy found at the Swindle crime scene." And no matter what, though, CD, I like the way you think. No, I genuinely do like the way you think, because for a long time, people believed that the Zodiac killer was inspired by holidays, that the Zodiac was someone who was trying to have this connection to holidays. And one of the loudest voices on this was Robert Graysmith, author of Zodiac and Zodiac Unmasked. But the Zodiac killer very clearly showed some awareness of holidays with the mailing of the Halloween card, as CD says, and yes, there also could be notes left behind in the Valentine's Day box, but the Zodiac mails the Halloween card on October 27th of 1970. Let's see, that'd be 3 or 4 days before Halloween, depending on how you think about it. And it is very genuinely a Halloween card. The Zodiac killer also talked about Christmas very frequently, always spelling it Christ Mass. And that was one of the first misspellings I learned about from the Zodiac killer, maybe even one of the most famous ones. But people also noticed the proximity of crimes to holidays. And you see though, February 5th, that's not Valentine's Day, but it's just before Valentine's Day, and there's this Valentine's Day box of chocolate, because the Lake Herman Road murders committed by the Zodiac killer are often said to have happened at Christmas. The Zodiac killer said that they happened at Christmas, that I'm the murder of the 2 teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman, is what the Zodiac wrote. And that is occurring on December 20th of 1968, just before Christmas. Now, the next shooting, the Blue Rock Springs shooting on July 4th of 1969, goes without saying that's actually occurring on a holiday. With the Lake Berryessa stabbing, that occurs on September 27th of 1969. That's just after the fall equinox. And then there is the murder of Paul Stein on October 11th of 1969, which is right around the time of Columbus Day, although Columbus Day is not a real holiday, sorry. But there is definitely this type of connection because some people who entertain this larger theory that there are pre-Zodiac crimes also say that the murder of Sherry Jo Bates from 1966 was a genuine Zodiac crime, and she was murdered on October 30th of 1966. October 30th, right before Halloween. So what is it? What is it? Is it just that people had free time before holidays, and that's when people aren't occupied? Or is it something to the contrary, that this person is actually trying to send somewhat of a message, and that this was all inspired because the Zodiac murdered Johnny Ray and Joyce Swindle in 1964, and then they had the box of Valentine's Day candy, and it's something that was just left a mark on the killer's psychology. As I said, I wanted to talk about the holiday connection because we also have a comment that came in from Classic Chevy Cat who said, "Something came to mind when I was listening to your show on the Santa Claus bank robbers." That was the Anything Goes Friday segment from last week. Why didn't the Zodiac take advantage of Halloween and use his hood then instead of Lake Berryessa? He sent the Halloween card, but didn't strike on Halloween. Too many people out with the kiddies? Was he busy taking his kids out trick-or-treating? Then I looked, and in 1969, Halloween was a Monday, so it was a work night. This is making the assumption that he had a regular 9-to-5 weekday job. Just some of my rambling thoughts, Ned. See, even if I've never heard of the crime, the Santa Claus robbers, which you talked about on the Anything Goes Friday segment, your shows always get my head scratching. I definitely appreciate that from Classic Chevy Cat. But that is something that is even more important than this holiday connection. That is the idea that there is a single Zodiac. This is completely in line with Sharon Hagen's profile of the Zodiac killer, that these crimes were committed by a single person who was working a 9-to-5 job or thereabouts. It could be 8 to 4:30, it could be a 10 to 6 job. Someone who has regular employment during the daytime, during conventional business hours, and he may have been married, may have had kids, but maybe he wasn't, though. But Todd Grande also shared something about psychological profiling, saying that he thought that not only was the guy working a regular job like 9 to 5, but a solitary job, spending most of his time alone, and then putting on the facade that he's the nicest guy in the world, and that he is perhaps just being very gentle, but again, he's spending the majority of his time in a solitary setting. However, the more important factor is the time frame that this person is trying to commit crimes only when he is available. Weekends, evenings, and holidays. In Lake Berryessa, the crime that I said that was close to the fall equinox, that is perhaps not the biggest example of a holiday, but that's still a weekend crime nonetheless. And the murder of Sherry Jo Bates even occurred on a Sunday night on October 30th of 1966, a weekend crime nonetheless. And I think that Sharon Hagen and I are perhaps in agreement with that even though she looks at the regular working schedule of the Zodiac, she does not include the murder of Sherry Jo Bates in the Zodiac's crimes, nor the Kathleen Johns incident, because she says that it's very confrontational, it's a very hands-on attack. It was definitely, more or less, getting physical with the victim, and that is one thing that the Zodiac did not do in the late 1960s. He did not get physical with the victims. Even the Lake Berryessa stabbing, perfect example. That's when the Zodiac is wearing the hood and the costume, and he approaches Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, and then he has them tied up and then starts stabbing them in the back. Then he had Cecilia Shepard tie up Brian Hartnell, and then he tied up Cecilia. So there's even a very little amount of confrontation that is actually happening with the victims physically. Furthermore, this isn't like some of those crimes where the victims are stabbed 100 times. And one point where I do agree with Kevin Robert Brooks is that when he says, a serial killer usually doesn't start out more vicious than he ends up, like with the murder of Sherry Jo Bates, stabbing her over 20 times, getting up close and personal with her, and then even getting in a struggle where she's ripping off his watch band, maybe pulling out skin samples from the killer. So I definitely think that those crimes were committed by someone different. But one crime that does not appear to be very confrontational was the Swindle murders from 1964. Because in that particular instance, you have, again, they're gunned down from a distance, and the only real difference between those crimes and the Zodiac crimes is that someone appears to have been shooting at them from a much farther distance, and also they are not in some type of car. To the best of my knowledge, that they are walking nearby where a kind of motel or hotel that they're staying at, but they are not parked nearby, because even Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards had their car parked nearby. That's the whole automobiles connection. But yes, even the Swindle murders has a few more differences than a crime such as the murder of Sherry Jo Bates. That's just my take on the subject, and if you want to dispute that, you can put your ideas in the comment section down below. You can share anything that you would like. But there's a second reason why I read off Classic Chevy Cat's comment, and that was because I thought that it's a really good observation that the Zodiac has created this Lake Berryessa costume, and he didn't use it for Halloween. He could have mailed a Halloween card in 1969, but the Halloween card doesn't come until 1970, and also he could have featured the costume on the Halloween card, and really, it must have been thinking about Halloween. It's only about 35 days before Halloween when he committed the Lake Berryessa stabbing, and he does have somewhat of a minimal connection to holidays, but that is what it is, though, and I think that making the observation that it was a work night is very, very important, so big shout out to Classic Chevy Cat. And I would like to move on to a new segment now, because we've been talking about the Swindle murders, as well as some of the other observations in the holiday connections. But if you didn't get a chance to hear the episode that I did on the Swindles, where I more or less just read off some of the news coverage, there was an alternative suspect in the Swindle murders. And you'll find this, though, when you read about all of the pre-Zodiac crimes. People will come up with alternative theories and alternative suspects. A very clear one in the Domingos Edwards murders is Sandy, the person who committed the murder of Vern Smith the day before on June 3rd of 1963. But with the Swindle murders, there is a suspect named Michael Lee Gambrill, who was a convicted murderer, and he committed a triple homicide, murdering both his parents and his sister with an axe. And I would like to go to a news article that has been shared on newspapers.com, written by Glenn R. Cooper, just citing the source, and it says, Private First Class Michael Lee Gambrill, age 19, is being held in West Palm Beach, Florida, for the murder last Sunday night of his parents and young sister. Gambrill, absent without leave from the Marine Corps, was apprehended in Boynton Beach, Florida at 9:30 p.m. and admitted slaying his father, Everett L. Gambrill, and his mother, Mary Eileen Gambrill, and his sister, Anna Bell, while they were sleeping at their home at 1420 South 32nd Street. Gambrill will be returned to Decatur within the next 2 days. State's Attorney Basil G. Grenias, Grenias, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, said the youth who was waived extradition from Florida must be represented in the county of Macon by the sheriff. Said the sheriff, excuse me. Sheriff Charles D. Peters today designated Chris Fallas, the chief deputy, to return Gambrill to West Palm Beach. Gambrill told Florida authorities he wasn't sure why he became so enraged. Ordinarily, he has reported this is the only time that he has become so excited. But became excited in the past when he used to listen to bongo records. I couldn't believe that. I was like, what? I know they're trying to do the whole blame the music thing, but not rock and roll. Bongo records? Not playing records is the next part of the article here, and I wasn't playing bongo records when I got home, Gambrill said. What on earth are people talking about? Lieutenant Larry Yates of the criminal section of Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department said Gambrill was transferred from Boynton Beach at 2 a.m. on Tuesday. Gambrill was picked up yesterday in Boynton Beach at 9:30 p.m. while walking along U.S. Route 1. Again, this is Florida. He was stopped by Police Sergeant William Hamilton and questioned. Gambrill said that he was a Marine but failed to show his leave papers. He was taken to jail by Sergeant Hamilton. While sitting in jail headquarters, Gambrill blurted out a confession that he had slain his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Everett L. Gambrill, and a 13-year-old sister named Annabelle, at their home in Decatur. And in the previous news articles, when they talked about Decatur, for some reason I just immediately thought they were referring to Decatur, Illinois. But you might be wondering, though, what's the connection between this triple homicide in Florida and the Swindle murders? Well, Michael Lee Gambrill can be placed in the area, and he was located there at the time of the Swindle murders. And in the other news coverage that you can hear about in the full episode I did, they look into him as a suspect, like he was a genuine suspect, because you have an actual convicted murderer is present, someone who just becomes enraged at the sound of bongo music. I don't even know what that is. Bongo music? Like, does they literally mean like he's just listening to bongo drums, or is this like reggae, or is this just like the ganja music that they're talking about? Okay, so he's listening to his bongo records, and then he just breaks out into a rage, and then he goes after people. So did he go after Johnny Ray and Joyce Swindle? Well, you might be noticing some major differences. The parents and the daughter, rest in peace to the family, they were murdered by axe, and Johnny Ray and Joyce Swindle were gunned down. And a crime that is committed by axe definitely suggests a familiar and intimate connection. And yes, Michael Lee Gambrill murdered his parents and his sister. Absolutely, that's as familiar as it gets. So I think that, again, that is another crime that people are trying to make a connection, but there isn't a very strong link between the way the Swindles were murdered and the way that the family was murdered. And I think the only way that you could actually establish a connection and say that Michael Lee Gambrill was the murderer was that he was just some type of unpredictable psychotic. But you could say that about any convicted murderer, that, oh, there's some type of unpredictable aspect to them. I also do not believe this thing about how he was inspired by music, or he would break out into rage and excitement when he's listening to bongo music. That is perhaps just some classic blame the music, blame the movies, blame the TV shows, blame the comic books, all of that stuff. They're trying to use that particular set of ideas as a form of scapegoating. But that's just my take on the subject, and I definitely would like to do perhaps a little bit more reading about Michael Lee Gambrill and the triple homicide that he committed, because there is a lot of info. It's just going to take some time. And a big reason why people do not believe that he committed the Swindle murders was he had the open opportunity to confess. And right now I would like to do something that is even a little bit more different, and I would like to go back to the Texarkana Moonlight murders from 1946. This is for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I definitely do believe there is a Zodiac connection, not one in terms of planning and preparation, like it's not the same people, but I believe that the Zodiac was heavily inspired by the Phantom Killer. So in terms of reading up on the subject, and there was a video that I did on the channel appearing on camera last week, and I was trying to really state the overall narrative about the Texarkana Moonlight murders, and it was part of a new series that I was doing called Full Analysis. I also made one about the Zodiac Killer, Phantom Killer Full Analysis, Zodiac Killer Full Analysis, and I was trying to tell the and in the process of trying to tell the full story, I referred to one of the victims in the Phantom Killer case as Robert Hollis, even though his name is Jimmy Hollis. And I only did it one time. And I thought about redoing the entire episode. Just one time I slipped up and I referred to him as Robert Hollis. And I do apologize. I don't know where that came from. I don't even know who Robert Hollis was. I was trying to think of all the possible connections. Maybe I was just fixated on some type of RH name. But there are people who have, again, names that are somewhat similar, but I do apologize for that error. And no, I've decided not to redo the entire series, and like the 4 times I mentioned him, 3 of them I got his name right. But I wanted to talk about that particular attack, not only to clarify, but it's something that gives the birth of the Phantom Killer. And to help us out, I'm going to go over to an article that was written by Spencer Hall and Holly Anderson called Just That, the Phantom Killer. In 1946, a killer targeted teenagers in the border town of Texarkana. With little help from police, the kids decided to fight back. And that's kind of a misleading statement, but this is the stuff that I wanted to talk about. It was an unseasonably warm night. Jimmy Hollis and his date, Mary Jean LaRae, were driving home from a double date at the movies when they decided to stop at a local lover's lane. A few minutes later, a car pulled up. A man approached the driver's side door holding a flashlight and a pistol. He wore a white cloth bag with eye holes cut out to cover his face. And this is the real reason why we are talking about the Phantom Killer to this day. I kid thee not. I mean, this is why people are thinking that there's some type of serial killer legend who operated in Texarkana. I repeat legend because we know so little about the actual crimes and the connections among the crimes of the Phantom Killer. But if it weren't for this sighting of the perpetrator wearing this hooded costume, which they call a bag, in other sources they state that it's a pillowcase with eye holes and a mouth hole cut out, but he's wearing this type of bag or sack over his head, and this really is why people think that there was a serial killer that was targeting lovers' lanes. And how do we even know that the same person went after the next double murder crime that occurred, the murders of Richard Griffin and Polly Ann Moore, and then the murders of Betty Jo Booker and Paul Martin, which would follow, because those 4 victims were all murdered. There were no survivors. They didn't give any witness statements. They did not say that the hooded attacker was present. I mean, they didn't say anything about the killer's description at all because they had been murdered. Once outside the car, the man told Hollis to take his pants off. When Hollis did, the man in the mask struck him with a heavy object twice, and then the second hit was so loud that LaRae thought that the gun had gone off, but it sent Hollis to the ground in the dirt. The man in the mask then turned to LaRae and struck her too. As far as the blunt object, some people have hypothesized that he was striking them with the gun, and it's a very odd choice to use, but you might be thinking, oh, he's carrying a flashlight, that could have been the blunt object. Other people thought that it was even just another thing that he was carrying, like a bar of some kind. Then he told Mary Jean LaRae to run. LaRae staggered away from her attacker, and the man turned his attention to stomping on Hollis's body. In heels, LaRae ran half-blind through the dark, desperate to find help. Eventually, the man in the mask caught up to her and struck her again before brutally sexually assaulting her with his weapon. And yes, well, I don't even want to read too many details about that or even talk about it. Go ahead and kill me, she said. Instead, he fled the scene. LaRae was treated for minor head injuries, and after the attack, she would move to Oklahoma and live with her aunt and uncle, mostly because of being too close to the crime scene. Jimmy Hollis suffered 2 skull fractures and would take months to recover. The Texarkana Gazette, the town's local newspaper, noted the attack 3 days later on February 25th of 1946, and that means the crime occurred on February 22nd of 1946, with the subhead, Insurance Agent and Girl Assaulted on a Lonely Dirt Road. Hollis, speaking to the police, predicted their assailant would kill the next couple he attacked. Well, there's also this theory out there that Mary Jean LaRae and Jimmy Hollis were interrogated by the police, and that they knew who the killer was, but they were covering for him, and for some reason, and why they would do that, I have absolutely no idea, but that has been something that has been uncovered and shared, and it is even on the Wikipedia page for the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. So I think that it's a rather perplexing incident. But what's even more perplexing is, on the one hand, some people are saying that maybe Mary Jean LeRae and Jimmy Hollis knew the attacker. On the other hand, they're saying that they don't even know what the guy looks like, because this is another problem with the Phantom Killer mystery. Both Mary Jean LeRae and Jimmy Hollis gave different witness descriptions. One person said the killer was African American, that they can see through the eye holes and the mouth hole, and that he's an African American. The other one is saying that he's Caucasian. Well, which one is it? Do they have no idea what the guy looks like? Or do they know this person individually and personally, and they're just trying to cover for him? Very bizarre story, but there do appear to be at least some connections among the Phantom Killer crimes, that multiple Phantom Killer shootings occurred with a Colt automatic 32 caliber pistol. I repeat, they do believe it was an automatic. That's what's written in the sources. So those would be the murders of Betty Jo Booker, Paul Martin, Richard Griffin, and Polly-Ann Moore. They think those crimes were all committed with the same firearm, and the attack on Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean LeRae is very different because they weren't shot. The killer had a gun, but the gun wasn't fired at the crime scene, so that doesn't really tell us which type of gun he was carrying. What caliber was it? Was it the same 32 caliber pistol? Because this is very important, because in the final crime committed by the Phantom Killer, the murder of Virgil Starks on May 3rd of 1946, the killer would then use a .22. And some people think, absolutely, this was one killer. It's just he was shooting from a distance, so he brought a .22 caliber rifle as opposed to a 32 caliber pistol, because he shot Virgil Starks when he was in his home, and the killer is outside of the home. And that makes sense to me, but there is still some room for doubt. And that might be, though, well, I mean, I think that I haven't really talked about the Swindle murders and the crimes that have also been committed with .22 caliber firearms. Now, some people simply think that that's the Zodiac killer's favorite gun to carry, but I should point out that the perpetrators in Zodiac and pre-Zodiac crimes did use .22 caliber firearms. However, they were also used in all sorts of different ways. At Lake Herman Road, David Faraday was shot practically point blank with a .22 caliber. You don't only have to use a .22 from a distance. And Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards were practically in a fist fight with the killer, who then gunned them down with a .22. And was it a rifle or a handgun? People are disputing that to this day. Now, I do accept the possibility that the Swindles could have been gunned down with a .22 caliber rifle if they're being shot from a distance of 50 feet, as well as Virgil Starks being shot from a distance outside of his home, and the killer's looking in and shoots Virgil Starks when he's sitting in an armchair. So, I mean, with the Phantom Killer, they really tried to build a solid narrative on how this was one person, that this is the hooded serial killer who's targeting lovers' lanes, and he is going after these people who are sitting alone, parked in cars. Then he wants to do something that they won't expect, so he's going to go after a farmer sitting in his house, as well as the farmer's wife. But Virgil Starks' wife, Katie, would survive the attack, and then she would get away. But she did not get any good look at the perpetrator. She didn't even know if he was wearing a hood or not. And if you'd like to hear more about the Phantom Killer, one more time, I do a regular segment about the Phantom Killer every Wednesday here on this channel. There are also even some older black box recordings. But right now, I would like to conclude the episode by going to your shout-outs on BuyMeACoffee.com. Once again, everybody who makes a contribution to help support the show will get a shout-out on Zodiac Mondays. And the first one comes to us from William Evans 1, who did not leave a message, but thank you all the same, William Evans. The next one comes to us from Quinton Broom, who says, "Thanks, Ned." And Quinton, you're welcome. The next one, Johnny Magnum Bussin says, "As one of the biggest and best porn stars in the business, I am proud to support Ned." Well, I can't comment too much on that, but Johnny Magnum Bussin, thank you so much. It's really interesting that you listed Magnum as your middle name, because that will be something that is included by coincidence in my next book of short stories that will be released. Someone with Magnum as a middle name. And then we have one from Sobek Lord who says, "Enjoy the coffee, Ned, Sobek Lord of the Four Corners." And our last one comes to us from Scott Sandow, who has also left one without a message, but any support is appreciated on BuyMeACoffee.com. And really, thank you guys so much for your contributions, all greatly appreciated. And anybody who makes a donation will get a shout-out, that is, on Zodiac Mondays. So, that's all for me now. Anybody can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. You can also get me on Facebook. My personal Facebook is in the description box. And there is always BlackBoxNed88 over on Instagram, and I will see you over there for the bonus podcast. Until next time.